Okay, folks. How do you define time? Is it the tick-tock that you hear here in the clock, old-fashioned one? Is that how you define time? Is time defined by, boy, does time fly? Or is time, how far it gets from one point to the next point? I would suggest that we really don't know how to define time. We know how to describe it. It flew by, went very slow today. It took me from this point to that point, this amount of time. That's all a description of time, but it's not defining time. So tick-tock, how do you define time? Furthermore, why is it 24 hours in a day? That sounds arbitrary. It would have been smarter if it was like divided by tens, right? Like 10 hours a day, 10 hours a night, or 10 hours altogether. That would have been seemingly more fitting. Why 24? Why not 26? 7 days of the week. Where's that come from? Well, that's an easy one. We know that comes from the Torah. But why 7? Is that just because God created the world in 7? Well, why did God create the world in 7 days? Or in 6 days, and 7th day is Shabbos? Is that also arbitrary? And obviously the answer is not. There's nothing arbitrary in God's world. Everything is precise. Everything is the way it's meant to be. So let's understand that. We spoke in yesterday's class about midos. Midos are divine attributes. The divine attributes of God. Actually, there's 10 divine attributes, so you would think, 10? Maybe that's what the world should be created with. But it's not. The world is actually created with 7 divine attributes, the 7 emotions. Why not the 10? If God is engaged in this world through his midos, through his divine attributes, is the divine engagement, right? And as we called yesterday, the Kabbalists called them oires, lights, as opposed to flow, as opposed to an anthropomorphic part described in the human condition, like divine kindness is the right hand, what we went through yesterday. So God creates 6 days through 6 divine attributes of emotions, divine emotions. Emotions because the creation means there's a sense of otherness from God's perspective, but again, from our perspective, right? There's creation, there's otherness. Emotions only apply when there's someone to have an emotional response or connection towards. Intellect, Chabad, Chachma Bina V'das, wisdom, understanding, and knowledge, you don't need at all to have another to exist in order to intellect. Right? You could be, just by way of example, metaphorically, lost in the desert, and no one could be existing in your life at all, especially in the desert, and you could gaze the stars and understand the intellect of the world, of the creation, and not have to relate to anybody. To relate to somebody, it already starts with emotions. In other words, that there's an existence of another. So since creation is about creating an independent being from their own perspective, me and you, that begins with the divine emotions. Intellect, that's before creation, beyond, above, not relative to, in a sense, but emotions. So therefore, for 6 days, God creates. And what's the first day? It's an expression of his chesed, his kindness. Hand, a flow of a non-stop flow, or a light, as we call it. What was created on the first day? Light. A light that ultimately is not a light of the sun, but an inherent light in creation that is beyond. So the first day is sort of an expression of almost limitless light. The only reason why it's not limitless is because everything in the divine order of things, divine kindness, also couples with it divine gvura, divine refrain. So, because everything in the divine is inclusionary, so therefore in the creation of light on the first day, God said, let there be light, there's also an aspect of gvura. And that gvura creates a refrain that creates a light that is limited. That's within the structure of this world. What did God create on the second day? He divided between the heavens above and the earth below, the waters above and the waters below. Division was created on the second day. Well, why was division created on the second day? It's because the second day is an expression of gevura. First day is chesed, the right hand. Second day is gevura, the left hand. Gevura means refrain, restrain, holding back, creating separation. When you hold back, you separate from what you're holding back from. So there is distinction. That's what gevura makes. Now, in that distinction, that it shouldn't be merely complete distinction, included in the gevura is also chesed. Because ultimately, everything is an act of God's kindness. So in the second day of creation, chesed. Now, Rebbe here doesn't go further in the different attributes, but just go one more day. The third day, what do we have? Landmass, growth, vegetation. And that's the third day is Tiferes, beauty, harmony. There's a harmony that's created on the third day, right? Harmony. Second day, there's distinction. There isn't yet any real formation of earth. So on the third day now, the earth becomes not just visible, but also there's growth. So the world is starting to harmonize, which is the third divine attribute. Tiferes, translated as beauty, also means compassion, because compassion is a harmonizing of chesed and gvura. What's the point over here? Is that we can see that creation of the world, a week, 6 days of a week days, and then of course Shabbos is Malchus, royalty, kingship, and the Alter Rebbe here doesn't explain it, but it's the day of rest, the king rests. So what do we see here? Very clearly. It's not arbitrary. It's not 10 days of the week, because the divine intelligence is primordial intelligence that is beyond creation. what it relates to creation from the divine attributes? Divine emotions. As we explained, emotion is towards someone. Intelligence doesn't have to have anybody in your world in order to utilize your intelligence. But to have an emotion, it has to be to something. I'm feeling loving towards you. I'm feeling a little distant from you, whatever the case may be. So, that's how God creates. Furthermore, to understand this idea, that's a week. How do we understand the concept of time? Tick-tock, distance, everything that you can describe as time is really a description and not a definition. But from here we have a definition. The first day, what is enlightening the world? What is the flow into the world? Chesed. Well, what happens after the first day? It goes back to its source. And a new divine energy is introduced on the second day, called Gvura. Now, it encapsulates or includes also Chesed and the other divine attributes, absolutely. Primarily those Gvura. Third day is Tiferes, and then Netzach, Hod, Yesod. 6 days. So it's a flow in and retracting. It is Ratzui V'Shoiv, coming in and going back out, breathing in, breathing out. And that's what time is. A divine flow that enters the world and then goes back. And with this we can understand, the Alter Rebbe doesn't go into this, but I will just add, the 24 hours of the day is based on God's name, because the flow of everything is based on God's name. Yud Kei Vav Kei, Yud and Hei and Vav Hei. 4 letters. Each letter is coupled with another letter. So 4 times 3, you get 12 possibilities. And if that's 12 hours of the day. And if you want to have night, reverse it, and you have 12 hours of the night. Now, in Jewish hours, 12 hours is not 60 minutes, but, now a daytime hour is much longer because we have more daylight. Nighttime hours are much shorter, but it's divided into 12. Why? Because God's name is the source. The Yud and the Hey and Vav and the Hey is the source of creation, and therefore it is in the first hour Yud and the Hey, that is a divine energy that is entering the world. Second is Yud and a Vav. Third hour is Yud and the final Hey. It is that divine energy, as we've spoken about earlier. The letters are the conduit of divine creation. Letters making a word, and the basic word is 2 letters in the Hebrew language. So it comes in energy, and after that hour, the first hour, what happens? The Yud and a Hey goes back to its source. What comes next hour? Another. So it is a flow coming in and going back. Tick, tock. I make this up now. Tick means the flow coming in. What's talk? Well, the hour, whatever we talk of Torah and whatever mitzvahs we do, goes up with the divine energy to the divine source above and remains there in an eternal manner. So energy comes in, it goes back, but it goes back with the goodness that was accomplished to its divine source. And that's why goodness is everlasting. A mitzvah is everlasting. Because it retreats or goes back to its source together with all the good, that divine energy. That's what defines time, a flow coming in. And in Hebrew, the word for time is sha'ah. Ma sha'ah, what's the time? Sha'ah means, come the word that God turned to Abel's offering, but he did not turn to Cain's offering. turn means sort of like, one from one, and you turn towards, meaning a flow coming in of divine energy, of divine light, and giving life and existence to that moment, to that situation, to us and all of creation. That is the definition of time. Folks, sharing is caring. Please share. Tomorrow will be Gimel Tammuz, 26th Yahrzeit Hilula of our dear Rebbe. Make sure tomorrow that we learn together, and that we do many things in honor of our dear Rebbe. I'm Rabbi Ronnie Fine, coming to you from my home in Montreal, Canada. It's a privilege and a pleasure to share with you, Tanya. Have a wonderful day.